Well, more surveillance, please. That's what the FBI is asking for. Yesterday, the FBI director urged Congress to give the agency extensive surveillance powers. The justification, the latest foiled terrorism plot. Here's FBI Director Robert Mueller pleading before Congress yesterday.
Meanwhile, al-Qaeda affiliates, especially al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, represent the top counterterrorism threat to the nation. AQAP has attempted several attacks on the United States, including the failed Christmas Day airline bombing in 2009 and the attempted bombing of U.S.-bound cargo planes in 2010. And of course, we in the Bureau are currently exploiting an IED, improvised explosive device seized overseas, which is similar to the devices used by AQAP in the past.
Now, he says this is a good reason to expand their ability to snoop on people online. They want to be able to wiretap the internet and are asking companies like Google and Facebook to alter their code to enable them to do so. And they hope to do this by amending a law that allows the wiretapping of phones and expand that power to the internet sites that people often use to communicate on these days. So is this infringing on your online privacy or a necessary tool to ensure public safety? Here to discuss this is Barrett Brown, founder of Project PM. Hi, Barrett. Thanks for joining us today. So what do you make of the FBI asking for more surveillance powers?
You had me at what do you think of the FBI, which I think is the most important question here. When you're providing a great deal of power to an agency, I think you have to look at that agency, how it has conducted itself historically, and then decide from there what problems are going to arise from giving them that power. Now, in the case of the FBI, we can go back to its founding, J. Edgar Hoover. We can come all the way back up to 1971, when it was just barely discovered that they had run a massive operation called COINTELPRO against civil rights activists, in which it would be an understatement to say they misused their powers in that, and it was only shut down under that name because it was discovered. Now, more recently, we have any number of incidents one could point to, with AT&T providing wholesale communications of its customers to NSA, and then afterwards getting immunity. We have there's too many examples we can point to answer that question as to why it shouldn't happen.
Now, what the FBI is going to argue that we live in different times today, and different times call for different measures, I guess. Here's what FBI Director Robert Mueller also said, kind of as a justification to expanding this power.
Access to information that enables us to identify persons both within the United States but also without the United States that would hurt us, but also our intelligence agencies to operate overseas to pull in this information under the supervision of the FISA court, so that we can put together the information we need to prevent attacks. Okay. It's been essential.
Now, he is calling this essential, kind of referring to the latest foiled al-Qaeda bomb plot. This is being used as justification. Is it fear-mongering, or is it truly necessary to obtain the intelligence to prevent these kinds of attacks?
As you said, these are different times. Their argument about that is absolutely correct. Among the differences in the times we have today is that any entity with that much, with a great deal of resources and access to what's being produced in the intelligence contracting industry, has unprecedented options, not just by which to surveil population here or abroad, but also by which to put out disinformation, by which to promote propaganda using means that are really untraceable. You know, there's a recent incident in which USA Today journalist and editor were looking into one of these info contractors called Leone Industries. And they a couple days after calling them and inquiring and asking some tough questions, they were targeted this weird campaign by which websites were taken out of their name, and there were message board posts, Wikipedia edits, all trying to discredit them. And the thing is, probably nothing will come of that. Just like a year ago when H.B. Gary, that whole Team Themis incident, the conspiracy against WikiLeaks, Anonymous, and several left-wing groups, that was exposed, and thankfully got a lot of media attention because Anonymous, they were the one to hack it in. There was a lot of sort of cute derivatives on that story, but it just sort of faded away, and in the end, no one really was punished. There's just no reason. There's no negative feedback to those within the agencies themselves or these peripheral companies to prevent them from misusing their powers, and there never has been that negative feedback.
So it sounds like what you're worried about is granting these expanded powers will most likely lead to the abuse of these powers.
Those of us who have been involved in sort of the activism scene the last year or two, we are sort of canaries in the coal mine in so much as we can see what happens to people. Even aside from what H.B. Gary was planning, they were going to set up a leftist activist group for fraud at the behest of Chamber of Commerce. There's just been a number of incidents that are sort of aren't easily summarizable, but that have gone down, and which hopefully occasionally get to get in front of the press. But altogether, there needs to be a shift in attention to what's going on with these agencies, with the powers they're developing that are still very little known among the public, and the lack of oversight in Congress and elsewhere.
Now, Barrett, what they want to do is amend a law that gives them the authority to wiretap phones, and this has been happening for years. But now more and more people communicate on the internet through email, through Skype, through instant messaging, things like that. So does it kind of make sense that they would want to expand their, do what they were doing on the phones and now use the internet, be able to do the same thing on the internet?
The law enforcement components of any nation always wants to expand its capabilities, always. And the reason this country has a constitution is to have prevented the sort of abuses we saw in the 18th century as opposed to today. There's an argument that times are different. Again, that argument applies to such a great degree to what capabilities are now available to these agencies and these companies and again, that needs to be given some thought.
Now, Barrett, I also want to switch over to another law. This isn't the only law in the works right now aimed at the government, expanding government cyber powers. Congress is set to amend the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. As you can recall, this sparked a lot of controversy because people can say the language in it is so broad, so vague, that essentially what it can allow is bringing Guantanamo Bay right here to our home turf. But now they want to amend it to expand cyber powers in this bill as well, and wanted to pull up that amendment being added to the National Defense Authorization Act by Congress. It's the authority is described as subsection A includes the authority to carry out a clandestine operation in cyberspace. That's in support of a military operation pursuant to the authorization for use of military force. It goes on there, Barrett. First of all, what is a clandestine operation anyways?
Well, the ones that I'm aware of, the best example, again, is Team Themis. And some of the things that were proposed by these several companies that do this kind of work also for the government, but then also turn around and give them to private entities like Bank of America, whoever else asks, is that they usually have no ethics. The things they were planning to do in order to dishonestly give the impression that some of these groups had done things they hadn't, I think is a good indicative of what's going to happen, what's going to be very possible and widespread. First of all, as the mentality increases among the intelligence community and law enforcement community that these things are all right for them to do. And B, as these same capabilities are continually incubated in this private sector that has even less oversight than the public intelligence.
Now, what it sounds like, Barrett, in the language there, amending this law, is giving the government broad powers to conduct military operations online if they see fit. Is that essentially what it does?
Well, they have those capabilities anyway. There's a firm called Endgame Systems, which actually this is one of the things that was revealed in that large cache of emails last year, which it turned out has the capability to take out any target in an airport, for instance, using backdoor installs that are already there, and that also commands a number of criminal botnets. Even though this was revealed, again, this is one of those instances in which the press isn't really capable, simply because it's an opaque world that we're talking about here, and it's such opaque technologies, such capabilities, that we only have a small idea of what they're capable of doing, what this means when they talk about cyber capabilities. But what we've seen so far is enough to extrapolate and be very, very worried about what they're going to be doing if this amendment is passed.
All right, Barrett, another hot button issue when it comes to our online freedoms. Thank you very much for joining us today. That was Barrett Brown, founder of Project PM.